Hey everyone. Before we dive into today's story, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing momentum, and hitting subscribe is one of the fastest, easiest ways you can support us. It's free. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps us keep delivering the drama you love. So please, tap that button. Now your support means the world. All right, let's get into it. I'm Adrian, 40 years old, and I work in renewable energy installations. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills and lets me sleep at night. My wife Mia is 36, caring and sharp-minded. Together we have our little firecracker, Emma, who just celebrated her 7th birthday. Her laugh is the soundtrack of our home. My sister Zoe is 34. Growing up, she was pretty enough and smooth with words. She always wrapped insults in sweetness. Her 2 daughters, Lily, 9, and Ruby, 8, picked up that tone fast. Ask them the weather, and you'd hear, "Oh, Emma, did you mean to pick those shoes?" in a voice designed to sting. 3 years ago, Zoe's husband ghosted her. No warning. No, goodbye. Left her with a mortgage and 2 girls to raise. When Zoe called me in tears begging for help, I didn't hesitate. I started covering her rent, her utilities, groceries, clothes, you name it. It ran me about $0 a month. Mia wasn't thrilled at first, but she understood that family comes first. What I didn't expect was gratitude. Zoe never thanked me. Instead, she dropped backhanded remarks whenever I bought anything nice. Must be nice to afford that vacation home. Or funny how charity doesn't run both ways. All with that syrupy smile. She planted seeds of doubt in her girls. 2. Emma would come home saying things like, "Aunt Zoe thinks my dress is kind of bold." The worst of it was how naturally Zoe turned every conversation into a competition. She never let me forget who had it tougher. If I mentioned a work win, she'd sigh and say, "That's great, Adrian, but try doing it while juggling 2 girls and a deadbeat husband." Always a comparison. Always a jab. Last month, Emma had been invited to her friend's birthday party at a family-friendly indoor park, climbing walls, arcade games, the whole 9 yards. Mia was working that Saturday, so I planned a special father-daughter day. I booked a fancy salon. Emma wanted to feel like a princess. I called Zoe and said, "Hey, can you style Emma's hair today? I'll pay you extra." Her answer should have been a warning. "Oh, so now I'm a hairdresser on my day off. Well, I suppose I can squeeze in a few minutes before I get back to the real work." I missed the tone. Emma and I drove over at noon. She skipped ahead in her pink dress and sparkly shoes, humming about how amazing she'd look. I kissed her cheek and told her I'd be back around 5. I spent the afternoon at the shop. Ran some errands. Grabbed lunch. All normal Saturday stuff. At 5 p.m., I pulled up to Zoe's house. From the driveway, I heard the kind of cry that sears your heart. Not a fall or a stubbed toe. Deep, wailing sobs. Pure terror. I stormed to the front door and burst inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. Emma sat in the living room, shoulders heaving, tears streaming down her face. Her head was bare. Not a pixie cut or a bob, completely shaved. Strands of her long brown hair lay scattered like confetti on the floor. Zoe stood nearby, razor in hand, grinning like she'd just won a prize. Lily and Ruby were doubled over with laughter. "Wow, she looks exactly like you now," Zoe mocked. "Bald and ugly. Just like her dad." I didn't know I could move that fast. I scooped Emma up before she could notice me. She buried her face in my shirt. "Daddy, why did she do this? I just wanted to look pretty." My voice was calm even though I felt like I'd been stabbed. "What the hell did you do to my daughter?" "Zoe." She shrugged. I gave her a modern look. Besides, she always flaunted those curls like she was better than my girls. Now she's on our level. Anger surged through me. She's 7. She's a child. "Oh, please." Zoo sneered. She needed a lesson in humility. That was the final straw. I wrapped Emma in my arms, kissed her damp cheeks, and whispered, "You're perfect, sweetheart." Then I turned on Zoe. "You humiliated her. This is abuse. I'm cutting you off, and I'm taking action." By bedtime, we'd seen a pediatrician who documented every cut and bruise. We filed reports with Child Protective Services and the police that night. I contacted my lawyer. Emma needed therapy. Zoe was about to face criminal charges and see her house go into foreclosure. None of this was about money anymore. This was about justice. About teaching Zoe that you never hurt a child and get away with it. And with that, the real story begins. In the next part, you'll see the fallout at the police station, the legal battle that followed, and how Zoe reacted when she realized the consequences of her cruelty. Stay tuned. It only gets more intense from here. That evening, after we left Zoe's living room in ruins, Mia and I sat across from Detective Vega in the cramped interview room at the precinct. I handed him the photos of Emma's bare scalp and the video clip of Zoe's laugh every frame, a testament to betrayal. "This is assault," Vega said, his voice low but fierce. "And she'll answer for it." When he promised to open a case for third-degree child abuse and child endangerment, relief and dread crashed together inside me, because I knew nothing would ever be the same. By midnight, I'd sent Zoe a text effective immediately. Your bank account, rent checks, and every utility payment from me stops. Face the consequences of your actions. As soon as I hit send, I watched my online banking app to confirm the auto payments had been canceled. It felt cruel. But for 3 years I'd been her safety net. Now she'd learn how it feels to fall. When I closed the app, Emma peeked at the screen and sniffled. "Daddy, is Aunt Zoe going to be okay?" I pulled her close and whispered. "She'll be fine. You're going to be fine." But the lie tasted bitter on my tongue. The next morning, a knock at the door announced Miss Gomez from Child Protective Services. She had Lily and Ruby's statements, how Zoe forced their cousins to mock Emma. How she boasted about teaching kids a lesson. Miss Gomez frowned as she crossed off checkboxes on her clipboard. "I'm opening a family services case," she said softly, eyeing Zoe's empty bank account and current foreclosure notice. If things don't change fast, she could lose custody of her daughters. When she left, the house felt too quiet, and I realized that Zoe's cruelty had ignited a firestorm that threatened her entire family. Over the next week, subpoenas and foreclosure warnings flooded Zoe's mailbox. I got word from my buddy at the bank that her mortgage was in arrears, and the repo man was circling her street. Zoe saw me frantic voicemail after voicemail pleading, threatening, begging, but I stayed firm. Each message played like nails on a chalkboard, reminding me why I couldn't forgive or forget. Then one night around 10 p.m., she showed up at our front gate, eyes wild, hair tangled, clutching Lily and Ruby. "They're scared," she screamed. "You monster. You've taken everything." As she rattled the gate, I locked it tighter and told her through the bars, "This is on you." The climax came when our first court date arrived. Mia and I sat in the wooden pews of the family division courtroom, while Zoe's lawyer, a slick, expensive type I'd never met, told the judge Zoe was a devoted mother who'd made a harmless mistake. My pulse hammered as I watched Zoe in the defendant's chair, her face hollow and smug, shifting blame onto me for orchestrating a vendetta. When the judge reviewed the evidence, Emma's medical report, CPS findings, that damning video, the courtroom fell silent. Then he set bail, scheduled a jury trial, and warned Zoe that obstruction could send her straight to jail. As the gavel came down, I looked at Emma's tiny hand in mine and knew the real battle was only beginning. The morning after the hearing, I woke to dozens of missed calls and texts Zoe's frantic number. My mother's clipped demands to settle this before it ruins the family. And even a voicemail from Lily begging me not to send her mom to jail. My chest tightened as I listened to each one. Reminders that no victory in court could erase the wreckage she'd made of her own life. I silenced my phone and held Emma close. vowing again that we'd get through this, but the ache in my gut told me the real trial was only heating up. By the end of that week, CPS had moved quickly. Lily and Ruby were placed temporarily with their father, Zoe's ex, whose interest in custody had vanished for years but now re-emerged with unsettling eagerness. I learned Felix had a new girlfriend and a steady job. Within days, he filed for full custody. Arguing Zoe's criminal charges made her an unfit parent. The irony stung. Zoe had complained about my generosity. But now the tables had turned, and she was losing everything she'd fought to protect. Meanwhile, Zoe didn't go quietly. She started calling my office, her voice laced with venom as she told my boss I was abusing legal loopholes and using her case to boost my own image. 3 homeowners even reached out to complain about the hostile installer who refused to talk to family. I spent hours reassuring clients, fielding HR's questions, and feeling the world I'd built cracking around me. It wasn't just justice I sought anymore, it was survival. At home, my mother's interference morphed into a full-blown assault on our boundaries. She demanded visitation rights, citing grandmother privileges, and showed up unannounced at Emma's school to check on her granddaughter's well-being. When I told her to call ahead or face legal consequences, she retorted that I was turning into Zoe cold, ungrateful, and cruel. The thought that my own mother could see me as the villain cut deeper than any courtroom verdict. Therapy became our lifeline. Emma, once bubbly and fearless, now swallowed half her words and flinched if someone raised a hand. Watching her untangle her shame in those sessions broke me daily. But each breakthrough, her telling the counselor she was brave, her choosing to paint instead of hide, reminded me why I'd endured Zoe's wrath. Every emotional victory she scored was a blow against the darkness Zoe had tried to sow in her heart. Still, harassment followed me to the job site, anonymous texts, warning me tit for tat. Dead roses left in my toolbox. A stranger filming me through a window while I worked. One evening, I found a note slipped under my door. Next time, I won't stop at a haircut. My palms went numb reading it. And I realized I couldn't protect Emma alone. I needed legal shields of my own. By the weekend, I had restraining orders against both Zoe and Mom. A step I never imagined taking, but one that left me hollow. Back in court, Zoe's lawyer tried delaying tactics, filing motion after motion, calling for yet another psychological evaluation of everyone involved. The judge, already exasperated by her repeated no-shows and obstructions, gave her one final deadline: appear or forfeit her right to testify. Zoe's face on that judge's stare said it all. Her bravado was crumbling under the weight of her own lies. As I walked out of the courtroom, clutching Emma's hand, the sun felt colder than usual. Ahead lay the trial itself, where Zoe would finally stand judged by a jury. But even as I plotted every step, evidence lined up like dominoes ready to fall. I knew this chapter wasn't just about punishment. It was about teaching Emma that the world, however brutal, can be righted with courage and love. And that lesson would be the fiercest moment yet. The morning of the trial, I woke before dawn to Emma's small hand slipping into mine. Her eyes, shadowed by restless sleep, met mine, and I forced a calm smile. "We're safe," I whispered, though my stomach lurched. I dressed in my suit, pressed, conservative, and watched Mia steady her hands as she loaded Emma's backpack. We drove in silence. The city streets empty, save for the hum of streetlights. In that quiet, I felt the weight of every moment that had led us here and the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same. When we arrived at the courthouse, Zoe was already there, flanked by her attorney. Her hair was hidden under a bob-length wig, too neat, too deliberate, and her eyes gleamed with determination. She looked nothing like the woman who'd stood in my living room waving a razor. Across the hall, family members peered from behind mirrored doors. For a moment, I wondered if Zoe felt guilty seeing her daughters from afar, but her posture stayed proud, unbroken. I swallowed hard and led Emma forward. Our next steps would decide everything. The prosecutor opened with crisp efficiency. He played the video of Zoe's laughter as she shaved Emma's head. In slow motion, the razor glided. The hair fell, and Emma's face contorted in horror. The courtroom fell silent, so silent you could hear a pin drop. I watched jurors' eyes water as they saw my daughter's mutilated innocence laid bare. When the screen went dark, my chest tightened, as if my heart had been packed away in that clip, and all I could think was that Zoe would never erase what she'd done. Zoe's lawyer rose for the defense and tried to spin it as a misguided prank. A tough love lesson gone awry. He painted me as vindictive, the jealous brother who weaponized the legal system. My jaw clenched as he smirked, claiming that Emma had been spoiled and needed real-world humility. My blood boiled at his words, but all I could feel was sorrow that my own sister, once my champion, now stood accused of cruelty, calling me the villain of her story. When it was my turn, I took the stand with my voice shaking. I described how Emma arrived that afternoon, bright-eyed, hopeful, and how Zoe had turned that hope to ashes. I held back tears as I recounted the sight of her bald head, the scattered hair like fallen dreams. Emma watched from the front row, clutching Mia's hand. I caught her eye and saw courage there. She was listening, and that mattered more than my fear. Next, the child psychologist testified. She spoke of trauma, of how forced humiliation at 7 could scar self-worth for years. She explained that Emma's refusal to eat, her nightmares of being mocked, were predictable wounds. The jury nodded gravely as the expert laid out the path of recovery therapy sessions, trust building, the risk of permanent anxiety. With each fact, Zoe's defense unraveled further. Compassion was on our side, and cold cruelty had no legal shield. Then came Emma's moment. The judge gently called her name, and she climbed onto the witness stand with surprising poise. When asked what happened, she whispered clearly, "Aunt Zoe made me ugly and laughed at me." Her voice trembled only once. When she was shown before and after photos, she didn't look away. Instead, she said, "I felt small and worthless." The courtroom reeled in silence as that 7-year-old girl spoke truth to power. In that instant, Emma became a hero. Zoe's cross-examination was a disaster. Her lawyer asked if she felt remorse. Zoe shrugged and said she was mildly sorry the world overreacted. The judge banged his gavel, scolding her for contempt. Zoe's face paled as she sputtered apologies that tasted hollow. Finally, the court had seen her mask slip, revealing the unrepentant woman beneath. The prosecutor's closing argument was fierce. He spoke of trust shattered, innocence stolen, and the long road Emma would walk to rebuild her sense of safety. He painted a future where Zoe's actions echoed in Emma's nightmares, unless justice intervened. As he finished, I felt every juror lean forward, ready to right the wrong. Zoe's lawyer stuttered through his rebuttal, his case collapsing under its own cruelty. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The forepersons stood and announced guilty on both counts, third-degree child abuse and child endangerment. Zoe's shoulders slumped. For the first time, I saw genuine despair. When the judge set sentencing for next month, I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I gathered Emma in my arms as we left the courtroom, her small form trembling against me. We'd won this battle, but the war to heal her heart had just begun, and I vowed to be with her every step of the way. The week between the verdict and sentencing was a blur of paperwork and anxious anticipation. Every morning I woke waiting for the judge's summons, the weight of our victory tempered by the fear of what Zoe would face. Emma clung to me each night, whispering, "Daddy, is Aunt Zoe going to a bad place?" My heart ached as I reassured her, not just to calm her, but to steel myself for the moment when justice would finally land and nothing would ever feel simple again. On sentencing day, the courtroom brimmed with tension. Zoe, sitting alone in the defense chair, looked smaller than ever, her wig too perfect, her posture rigid with dread. When the judge pronounced 8 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and $15,000 in restitution, her face crumpled into tears that were somehow too little. Too late. I watched her stand, head bowed, and felt a grim satisfaction, knowing that for once she would face consequences equal to the pain she'd inflicted. Meanwhile, the civil suit moved fast. Zoe's attorney, eyes downcast, offered an $80, 0.000 settlement to avoid another public spectacle. We accepted, stipulating that every dollar go into Emma's college fund and ongoing therapy. Sitting across from Zoe's lawyer as he signed the final agreement, I realized we had turned her cruelty into a safety net for our daughter. That twist of fate, a reckoning that left Zoe bankrupt but Emma secure, felt like poetic justice. Zoe reported to the county jail 2 weeks later. I imagined her first night in a cell, the clank of the lock, the harsh fluorescent lights, the loss of control she'd tried to impose on others, now inflicted on herself. I resisted the urge to gloat. Even the hardest heart softens at the thought of someone alone in the dark. Yet I knew this was where she needed to be, to sit with her actions and perhaps, if she was capable, confront the damage she'd done. Back home, Emma began to bloom again. Therapy sessions, once traumatic, grew into safe spaces where she learned to reclaim her voice. I watched her paint bright suns on canvas, ride her bike without fear, and greet her friends with a smile instead of a flinch. Each milestone, a night without nightmares, a laugh unprompted, struck me like a bolt of hope. Proof that love and time could mend even the deepest wounds. My mother, however, remained a ghost from our past. Her calls went unanswered, her letters unopened. It wasn't until she sent a hospital gown stained with tears, her handwriting shaky, apologizing for siding with Zoe, that I saw a crack in her armor. But old hurts don't heal overnight. And while I filed her apology away, I knew forgiveness would have to wait for genuine change. With Zoe behind bars and my mother at a distance, life settled into a new rhythm for us. Mia and I rebuilt our home into a sanctuary where Emma could feel safe again. Yet as I readied myself for Part 6, the healing finale, I recognized that our story wasn't just about punishment, but about how a fractured family might one day find its way back to each other, or accept that some bridges are burned for good. And in that uncertainty lay the real climax of our journey. The morning Zoe was released from county jail, I watched from a distance as she stumbled through the jail gates. Her shoulders slumped under the weight of regret and uncertainty. Emma, holding Mia's hand, peered around the corner, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and caution. When Zoe spotted us, her face flickered hope, fear, shame, and she slowed, as if afraid to take another step. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions: relief that the nightmare was over, anger that her apology might still ring hollow, and a flicker of compassion for the broken woman before us. In that heartbeat, I realized our final chapter was about choosing how and if we would step forward together. Zoe approached with trembling hands, and every word weighed down by the memory of that day when she took Emma's hair. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice cracking. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to try." Emma's grip on Mia's hand tightened, and I saw the tiny warrior inside her, weighing the offer of reconciliation against a childhood marred by cruelty. Mia gave me a glance, no words needed, and I nodded at Emma. With a tentative step, our daughter whispered, "Maybe we can start small." And the air between us shifted with the fragile promise of healing. We brought Zoe home, not into the house, but to a nearby cafe where Emma chose a corner booth, bathed in soft morning light. Over apple juice and toast, Zoe spoke haltingly about the hours she'd spent in her cell, replaying every taunt and jeer she'd uttered. She described the cold concrete, the rattling bars, and how the walls became her mirror, forcing her to face the emptiness inside. Emma listened, eyes steady, and asked the first of many questions. "Why did you hate me so much?" Zoe's silence spoke louder than any excuse, and in that pause, our daughter found the courage to offer the first olive branch. "Can you promise you won't hate me again?" Zoe nodded, tears glinting on her cheeks. "I promise," she said, though I wasn't sure she believed it herself. That afternoon, we visited a wig shop using funds from the settlement. While Emma picked out bright scarves and hats, Zoe hesitated at the storefront, eyes trained on mannequins with perfect hair. Finally, she allowed an attendant to measure her scalp and discuss options. As Zoe tested a simple, elegant bob wig, Emma reached out and smoothed the fibers, no mockery, just empathy. The image seared itself into my heart, abuser and victim, bound by shared trauma. rebuilding trust one strand at a time. Back home, therapy sessions continued for Emma and for Zoe. Now court-mandated anger management classes. I watched parallels emerge, Zoe learning breathing techniques, Emma drawing emotions on paper. One evening, I overheard Zoe admit to her counselor, "I never realized how small a child's world is and how I shattered hers." In that confession, I recognized true remorse. The kind that doesn't seek credit but demands self-judgment. I let that moment echo quietly in my mind as I tucked Emma into bed, knowing that real forgiveness would take far longer than her 7 years. Weeks turned into months. Zoe volunteered at a local youth center, using her story to warn other parents about the cost of cruelty. She wrote letters to Emma, each one a mosaic of apology, reflection, and hope. Our weekly visits became less tense. Laughter began leaking through the cracks, shared jokes about Zoe's wig purchasing mishaps, Emma's proud recitations of spelling words. One Saturday, we all planted daisy seeds in my backyard, hands muddy side by side. As Zoe and Emma pressed seeds into the soil, they both paused, looking at each other with tentative smiles. In that simple act of planting life, we planted forgiveness too, and I felt the last of my anger begin to thaw. After a year, Zoe moved into a small apartment nearby. She found part-time work at a children's bookstore, arranging story hours and reading to wide-eyed kids. Emma insisted on helping her pick out the books, fairy tales, adventure stories, even biographies of brave girls. One afternoon, Zoe read aloud from The Secret Garden, her voice steady, and I watched as Emma's expression brightened at each hopeful turn of the page. It wasn't perfect harmony, but it was music of a different kind, the sound of two hearts relearning how to beat together. On the second anniversary of the haircut, we gathered in our backyard under blooming daisies. Emma, now nearly 9, stood between us, holding 2 garden markers, one labeled Emma and the other Zoe. Together, they wrote love in Emma's handwriting on the shared stone and pressed it into the flower bed. Zoe knelt, tears in her eyes, and hugged our daughter. "Thank you for teaching me kindness," she murmured. Emma whispered back, "Thank you for trying." As I watched them, I realized our story had come full circle from betrayal to judgment, from wounds to tentative trust, and finally, to a fragile but real reconciliation. Not every family heals completely. Some bridges remain burned, and scars never fully fade. But on that day, with the sun warming our faces and daisies nodding in the breeze, I believed we had done the impossible. We had rewritten our ending. And for Emma, who learned that even the deepest pain can nourish the brightest growth, I knew the real victory wasn't the trial or the settlement. It was the unbreakable hope that forgiveness, like those daisies, can bloom again. Story 2. Without consulting me, my parents chose to add my name to my brother's mortgage, who is a compulsive gambler. When his default was called up by the bank, they were rendered speechless by my response. I'm finally prepared to share the entire story, which took place over the last 2 years. I'm still in shock that I was harmed by my own family. It's lengthy, but bear with me. It's worth it in the end. Brief background. I am a 31-year-old man who works as a mechanical engineer for a large Houston oil company, earning about $165. Zéro plus bonus. I was raised in the middle class, but I put in a lot of effort to get to where I am now. Texas A&M full scholarship, graduated with a magna cum laude. Since then, they have been moving up the corporate ladder. The dynamics in my family are complex. Dad is an electrician by trade, before she retired. Mom was a school secretary. Although they are decent people, they have a huge blind spot. Danny, my younger brother. Since college, 27-year-old Danny has been addicted to gambling. Began with football fantasy, switched to online poker, followed by sports betting, and finally weekend casino trips to Louisiana. It is impossible for the man to pass a scratch-off ticket without purchasing 5. He has maxed out all of his credit cards, borrowed money from anyone who was foolish enough to lend it to him, and blown through our grandparents' inheritance money. The problem with gambling addicts is that they are skilled manipulators. If it meant winning money for his next wager, Danny could make you believe that everything was fine. I've seen him make up stories about sure-thing investments, insider information from his bookie friends, and complex card-counting schemes that never worked. And each and every time, our parents fell for it. He is improving. He is currently attending meetings. It's different now. All he needs is another chance. I had already heard it all. It was always the same cycle. Danny would come to his parents and cry about things like car repairs or rent money. They would give him money, and he would spend it all on internet gambling sites in less than a week. The cycle would then start over. One Christmas, I recall Danny arriving with pricey presents for everyone. Mom's designer perfume, a high-end set of tools for Dad. I'd like some expensive headphones. He chose to play the giving son after discovering that he had struck gold on a football parlay. He was requesting a loan for groceries 2 weeks later. I kept my distance and moved to Houston after college because of this. For Mom's birthday or Christmas, I would send money home. But I quickly discovered that I should stay out of Danny's financial troubles. Whenever I attempted to assist, the funds simply vanished into a sports betting app or online casino. My biggest error was that the morning was a Thursday, 8:15 a.m. My phone rings as I'm driving to a construction site in my truck. Unknown local area code for an unknown number. I would normally leave it on voicemail, but I answered when our contractors called regarding a significant project. This is Patricia from First National Bank. Mr. Rodriguez, about your mortgage account for the house at 1247 Oak Valley Lane. I'm giving you a call. We must talk about immediate payment as your account is now 75 days past due in order to prevent foreclosure. I pulled over to the side of the road. Ma'am, I think you have the wrong number. I don't have a mortgage with your bank. See ya. According to our records, you co-signed for a $320. Zero mortgage in March of last year. The property is registered to Daniel Rodriguez, with you listed as the co-signer and guarantor. My blood went cold. Danny. Oak Valley Lane was in the subdivision where my parents lived, about 3 blocks from their house. I knew that street. It was one of the newer developments with houses in the $300 range. Way more than Danny could ever afford. On his sporadic income from whatever odd jobs he managed to keep for a few weeks at a time. Ma'am, I never co-signed anything. I've never even been to your bank. I understand your confusion. Mr. Rodriguez. But we have all the documentation here. Your signature social security number, employment verification, income statements. The loan was approved based on your creditworthiness as the co-signer. This is fraud. I need you to email me every document you have immediately. She hesitated. Sir, I can't just email sensitive financial documents to someone without proper verification. Ma'am, if someone forged my signature to get a $320 loan, this is a federal crime. Either you email me those documents right now, or I'm calling the FBI, and your bank is going to be part of a criminal investigation that got her attention. Let me verify your identity first. Then I can send the documents. 10 minutes later, the documents hit my inbox. I sat in my truck in a Whataburger parking lot, staring at my phone screen in disbelief. There was my name printed clearly. Miguel Rodriguez. My social security number. My employment information. Correct. Company name. Correct job title. Correct salary. A signature that looked exactly like mine. Even a copy of my driver's license. But I had never seen any of these documents before in my life. The mortgage was for a house 3 blocks from my parents. The borrower was listed as Daniel Rodriguez, my brother. The co-signer was listed as me. The loan amount was $320. Ling. With a monthly payment of $2. 387. The down payment had been $25. Ling. I scrolled through the employment verification section. Someone had called my company's HR department, pretending to be a loan officer, and verified my employment, salary and length of service. The documentation looked completely legitimate. But the signature analysis I did on my phone told a different story. The signature looked close, but the pen pressure was wrong. The way the M curve did, Miguel was slightly off. Someone had practiced my signature, probably using examples from birthday cards or Christmas checks I'd sent home over the years. I called in sick to work and drove straight to my parents' house. This couldn't wait. I didn't call ahead, just showed up at 11 a.m. with a folder full of printed bank documents and a recording app ready on my phone. Mom answered the door in her bathrobe. Looking surprised, "Miguel, what are you doing here? Why aren't you at work? We need to talk." "Where's Dad? Where's Danny? Your father's in the garage working on Mrs. Peterson's lawnmower. Danny's at work." "Well, he said he had a job interview this morning." Classic mom. Always making excuses for Danny. A job interview that probably didn't exist. "Get Dad now and call Danny. Tell him to get over here immediately." Mom's face went pale. She knew that tone. I'd used it exactly twice before. Once, when I caught Danny stealing money from her purse for lottery tickets, and once when I found out Dad had been lending Danny money to cover his gambling debts. Dad came in from the garage wiping grease off his hands. "Miguel, what's going on?" "Son, you look like someone died." I spread the mortgage documents across their kitchen table. The same table where we'd had family dinners for 20 years. Where Dad had taught me to balance a checkbook. "I need one of you to explain to me how Danny got a $320. Zero mortgage with me as the cosigner. When I've never signed anything." The silence was deafening. Dad's face went white. Mom sat down hard, her coffee mug shaking in her hands. "Miguel." Dad started and stopped. Just don't tell me the truth right now." Mom started crying. We didn't know what else to do. Danny was going to lose the house. The bank said he needed a cosigner with better credit. "So you forged my signature." "We didn't forge anything," Dad said quickly. We signed for you as your parents. We thought we had the right." "You have the right?" "Dad, I'm 31 years old. You would have said no." Mom whispered. "You're darn right, I would have said no." That's when Danny walked in. He took one look at the papers, and his face told me everything. No surprise. Just resignation. "Oh. This is about the house, yeah. Danny. The $320. Zero house that you bought, using my credit without my permission." He shrugged and grabbed a soda from the refrigerator. "Like we were discussing the weather. I was going to tell you eventually you were going to tell me that you committed fraud." "It's not fraud. Man. We're family. Besides, I've been making the payments." He popped open the soda with that same cocky attitude he'd had since high school. I looked at the bank notice. "Danny, you're 75 days behind. That's temporary. I had some bad luck at the casino last month. But March Madness is coming up. And I've got this system. Bad luck at the casino. Danny, are you seriously telling me you're behind on a mortgage payment because you gambled the money away?" Dad stepped in. "Miguel, you don't understand? Danny's got this new system for betting on sports. It's calculated. Scientific. A system for gambling. Dad, gambling addiction isn't a career. It's not gambling," Danny said defensively. "It's investing. I've been studying sports analytics. Probability theory. I'm up $12. This month alone. If you're up $12. Ling. Why is the mortgage behind? Because I reinvested the winnings. You have to think long term. Miguel, I'm building capital for bigger bets." I stared at my brother. He was completely serious. In his mind, he was some kind of financial genius, not a gambling addict who just defaulted on a fraudulent mortgage. "Danny, how much do you owe in gambling debts right now?" He looked at Mom and Dad. Then back at me. "Maybe like $30. Ling. But that's just short-term credit. Once my system pays off $30. Ling. Miguel. Please don't yell. Mom said the neighbors will hear. Mom. I don't care about the neighbors. Your son owes $30. Noel in gambling debts. And he's defaulting on a mortgage that he fraudulently put in my name. We'll figure it out. Dad said, as a family. No, we won't. I'm calling the bank and telling them this was fraud. You can't do that, Mom said, panicking. Danny could go to jail. Good. Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. Danny finally looked worried. Miguel. Come on, man. Family doesn't do that to family. Family doesn't commit fraud against family either. Danny. Look. I'll catch up on the payments. Just give me a couple months. I've got this new strategy for baseball season. I started packing up the documents. Danny. You've been gambling for 8 years. You've never had a strategy that worked. You're an addict. I'm not an addict. I'm an investor who's had some bad luck. Dad. I said. What if we helped with the payments? Your mother and I could take out a second mortgage. Use our retirement savings. Dad. You're retired on a fixed income. You can't afford a $2.400 mortgage payment. We'll figure something out. I'm calling the bank tomorrow and reporting this as fraud. Then I'm calling the police. Mom started crying harder. Please don't send your brother to jail. Mom. Danny sent himself to jail the minute he forged my signature. We forged your signature. Dad said quietly. If anyone goes to jail, it should be us. I looked at my father. This man who'd worked construction for 30 years, who taught me about integrity, who'd never taken a shortcut in his life. Dad. Why? Why would you do this? Because he's our son. Miguel. And sometimes you do stupid things for your kids when you love them, even if it destroys your other son's life. Dad looked down at his hands. We thought you'd never find out. I stood up and headed for the door. Where are you going? Mom asked, to get a lawyer and then to call the FBI. Miguel. Please. Danny said. Following me. Just give me one more chance. I'll go to rehab. Whatever you want. I turned around. Danny. How many one more chances have you had? How many times have Mom and Dad bailed you out? This is different. It's always different. Danny. But it's never actually different. I walked out and drove home. But I didn't call the FBI that night. Instead, I sat up until 3 a.m. researching mortgage fraud, consigne liability, and my legal options. What I found out was going to change everything. The next morning, I called in sick again and drove to downtown Houston to meet with an attorney who specialized in financial fraud. The consultation cost me $400. But it was the best money I'd ever spent. The law office was in one of those glass towers downtown. All marble and mahogany and degrees on the wall. My attorney was sharp. Mid-50s. Expensive suit. The kind of guy who'd probably send a few white-collar criminals to federal prison. Mr. Rodriguez. My attorney said after reviewing all the documents. This is textbook mortgage fraud. Your signature was forged. Your income was misrepresented without your consent. And you never agreed to be a cosigner. This is a federal crime with serious penalties. What are my options? You can report it as fraud and have the authorities investigate and prosecute your family members. You'll be removed from the loan and won't be legally responsible for the debt. And if I don't report it, then you're legally responsible for a $320. Zero mortgage on a house you don't own, don't live in, and never wanted. If your brother defaults, which he already has, the bank can come after you personally for the full amount plus penalties and interest. Can they garnish my wages? Absolutely. They can take your house, your car, freeze your bank accounts, destroy your credit rating. You'd be financially devastated. Given your income, they'd probably garnish the maximum amount allowed by law until the debt is satisfied. I sat back in his leather chair and thought about it. What happens to my family if I report it? Your parents and brother would likely face federal charges for conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud. We're talking about potential prison time. Maybe 2 to 5 years each. Depending on their criminal history and level of cooperation with authorities and the house, the bank would initiate immediate foreclosure proceedings. Your brother would lose the property and probably still owe money if it sells for less than the mortgage balance. I thanked my attorney and drove home to think that evening I did something I hadn't done in years. I researched Danny's gambling history online. What I found made me physically sick. Danny had active accounts on at least 6 different online sports betting sites. His social media was full of screenshots of big wins. But if you looked closely at the dates and context, the wins were always followed by posts about needing money for rent, garreper, or other emergencies. With what money? You mortgaged your house to pay for Danny's legal fees. We'll figure something out. Get jobs. Sell things. No. Dad. You'll figure something out. I'm done figuring things out for this family. Danny called me last month from prison. Miguel, I've been clean for 18 months now. I'm going to Gamblers Anonymous meetings every day. I'm a completely different person. Good for you. I want to make amends. I want to pay you back for everything I cost you. How much do you think you owe me? I don't know. Maybe $50. Oh, 0 for the trouble and legal fees. Danny. You cost me. Gains. 0 in attorney fees. Woo. 0 in forensic accounting and investigation costs. And about 200 hours of my time dealing with this mess. Plus emotional damages and the stress you put me through. How much is that total? My attorney calculated it at $127. Ling. The exact amount you lost gambling over 2 years. I don't have that kind of money. I know. That's why I bought your house. You bought my house, yep. Got it for $210. 0 at the foreclosure auction. Put $15. 0 into renovations. It's worth about $340. 0 now. You're making money off my house. I'm making money off the house you bought with my stolen identity. The house you lost because you couldn't stop gambling long enough to make the payments. That's messed up. Man, that's messed. Danny, you want to know what's messed up? What's messed up is a gambling addict stealing his brother's identity to buy a house, then losing it because he bet the mortgage payments on fantasy football. I'm not that person anymore. Prove it. Stay clean for 5 years. Get a real job when you get out. Pay your own bills. Then maybe we can talk. And until then, enjoy the 3 more years you have left in federal prison. Yesterday, I got my monthly rental check from Danny's old house. Babe. I've collected over $30. 0 in rent so far. The house has appreciated to $350. Ling. My total profit on their fraud about $125. 0 and counting. Sometimes people ask me if I regret prosecuting my own family. If I think I was too harsh or unforgiving, the answer is absolutely not. They didn't think of me as family when they stole from me. They thought of me as a piggy bank. Someone whose credit and identity they could use to solve Danny's gambling problems without consequences. They were wrong about the consequences. Every month when I deposit that rental check, I remember something important. Enablers only exist when they're victims. Let them. I didn't let them. And now they get to live with the consequences while I profit from their crimes. Justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about turning your attackers' weapons against them. They used my identity to commit fraud. I used their fraud to build wealth. Turns out I learned more from their crime than they did. Story 3. At brunch. My mother said, "All we're trying to do is be kind. Even to you. Don't believe you are important." My uncle chuckled. My father remained silent. I nodded, took a sip of coffee, and walked out in silence. The cabin they all adored appeared 2 weeks later. Sold. After that, I flagged the family's subscription cards, closed their shared credit line, and waited. My phone was overflowing with messages from the family chat that night. After that, I got the first call. I initially believed I had misheard. But I was mistaken. In public, my mother actually said it aloud. With reckless abandon, my uncle let out a loud laugh that sounded like the punchline to a well-done roast. My father remained silent. Nothing. As if she had made a remark about the weather. He simply continued to eat. The words weren't the only thing. They said it in front of my sister, my uncle's wife, and my cousins, as if they were acting, as though I were the family joke. Additionally, this was just another Sunday performance. Shame rose. Hot and bitter. in my throat. I didn't feel guilty about my identity or my past actions. I felt embarrassed because I had sat at that table thinking that perhaps they had a different opinion of me now, that everything I had helped with had changed, and that perhaps this time would be different from the others. They weren't embarrassed. Though, my mother was grinning, as if she had finally expressed what she had been considering for years. My uncle chuckled as if it were his prize for being there. Not even looking up from her phone did my sister. My father simply consumed his eggs. That's what stuck in my memory. He remained silent. I experienced a surge of anger. Solid. Quiet. However, I maintained my composure. I didn't cause any trouble. I nodded, sipped my coffee slowly, got up, and walked away silently. My name was not called. I was not followed. Nobody even appeared shocked. The sun was shining too brightly on the pavement when I walked out into the parking lot. Got into my car, sat for a minute, and then drove home with the windows down and no music playing. It was just me, the wind, and an unabated buzzing in the back of my head. I had already decided by the time I pulled into my driveway, no retaliation. Don't shout. Simply take it out. Quiet, tidy, and comprehensive. The first target was the cabin. It was always the family cabin. According to my parents, as if we had all contributed, the portion where I paid for the foundation, roof, repair, and new plumbing was omitted. The name on the deed was mine. They behaved as though they owned it. Family vacations and holiday weekends. BBQs for the 4th of July. I signed into my work's real estate platform. I made the listing draft that I had been keeping for months live. In 5 days. It is sold. Offer in full cash. No counter. Lost. Then, when my parents needed a new washer and dryer set but lacked the funds, I opened a shared credit line for them. For the past 6 months, I had been making the minimum payments in silence. They didn't even recall that I owned the account. I canceled the auto payments and closed the account. Leave the calls to the bank. I then pursued their Amazon cards. With their own cards on file and connected to my primary account, they had been using the Prime subscription that I had paid for. I reported all 3 for questionable behavior and opened a support ticket requesting that the household account be completely closed. Around 9:40 that evening, the family group chat began to explode. My sister. Why has my Prime membership been terminated? Has anyone been compromised? The cabin was taken off the calendar by my cousin. Mom. 3 question marks. That's all. It was still a mystery to them. None of them brought up the branch. And I still hadn't put it together. None of them inquired about my well-being. They were simply perplexed. Irritated. Rightfully so. My phone then buzzed once more. Not a family call. Not a text. The number was unidentified. I replied. It was my mother's attorney. Around 7:15 the following evening, the call came in. I was sitting in my house with a bowl of cold pasta, disregarding the 5th family chat message. Unknown figure. Something urged me to answer, even though I was on the verge of leaving it on voicemail. Hello. I'm Carol Walker. In certain continuing family arrangements, I speak on behalf of your parents. I hoped we could talk for a while. Her tone was composed, polished, and practiced. I remained silent. Just wait. She added, your dad has requested that the car be retrieved. 2 years ago. You gave him a gift. He plans to give the title to one of my colleagues. He's asking for the car to be returned right away. And I know it was a gift. I just stared out the window for a few seconds. It didn't surprise me. Not at all. The cabin, the credit line, and the accounts were all taken away from them. They were now searching for scraps. The car wasn't the point. Making sure I understood that they still had power and could attack me at any time was the goal. When and where? I asked her. She sounded somewhat taken aback, as if she had anticipated a brawl. She provided me with their address and a time for the following day. Before she could say anything more, I hung up after telling her I would be there. I cleaned the car the following morning and removed everything that belonged to me, including the charging cable, the backup registration, and the old sunglasses that were in the glove box. It was odd, but not depressing. Just the last one. Like closing a file you'd had open for too long. It was precisely 1 p.m. when I drove to their home. Same driveway I used to shovel when I lived at home. Same hedge that always died in the winter and came back in crooked patches. I parked, got out and rang the doorbell once my mom answered. Behind her was my dad, arms crossed, just watching. My sister was inside too, stretched out on the couch with her phone, pretending not to be interested. She was wearing the same hoodie I bought her last Christmas. I held out the keys and said I was here to return the car, just like the lawyer asked. My mom didn't take the keys. She just stood there blinking, then said we needed to talk, that this whole thing had gotten out of control, that we were family and family shouldn't act like this. Her tone shifted fast, from cold to soft to performative. I didn't step inside. I told her I wasn't interested in talking anymore, that I wasn't angry. Just done. I wasn't going to play along with their version of things. I wasn't going to keep giving while they kept finding new ways to remind me I wasn't part of them. Not at all. That's when my sister sat up and launched into it. Said I was taking everything personally. That I was twisting what Mom said. That she'd been under stress. That they'd all been dealing with things I didn't understand. That I was throwing away relationships over one comment at brunch. I just stared at her. Let her talk. None of it meant anything. She said I was wrong about everything, and that I'd regret cutting off people who cared about me. I wanted to ask when that caring had actually happened, but I didn't bother. I placed the keys on the porch railing, turned around, and walked back down the steps. My mom called my name once, like it might undo something. My dad never said a word. I ordered a taxi and sat quietly in the back, staring at the street signs. The same ones I passed when I used to ride my bike to school. I didn't feel good or bad, just on. When I got home, I logged into my bank and canceled the $900 transfer I'd been sending each month for my sister's rent. She lost her job back in February and said she just needed help until she figured things out. I didn't ask questions. I just sent the money a week after the first payment. She bought a pair of designer boots and posted them on Instagram with the caption "Retail Therapy." I should have stopped it then, but I didn't. I kept paying March, then April, then May. The payment for June was already scheduled. I canceled it. The next morning I woke up to a storm. 10 missed calls. Group messages. Voicemails from my sister in 3 different moods, confused, angry, and guilt-tripping. She said she was going to be evicted. That I'd left her hanging. That I knew she was struggling and now I was just punishing her for a fight I had with our parents. She said I was being cruel. I didn't respond. By afternoon, the chat had turned into a war zone. Cousins were chiming in, asking what was going on. My uncle sent one of those, "This family is falling apart" texts he always sends when he doesn't understand something. My mom sent a long paragraph about how communication is the only way forward. Still no apology. Still no one admitting anything. That night, the messages stopped. And then the next morning, my dad finally said something. The message came just after 6 in the morning. I wasn't even fully awake when I saw it light up my phone. One sentence in the family chat sent from my dad's number. "If this behavior doesn't stop, everyone who doesn't live here will no longer be welcome in this house." That was it. No preamble. No emoji. No explanation. Just flat, direct. It was so out of character. It took me a moment to believe it was really him. He was the quiet one. The one who always sat through the drama without stepping into it. He rarely texted. Never commented in the chat. If he had thoughts, he kept them to himself. So when he spoke, everyone noticed. My sister answered almost immediately. "Wait. What are you talking about?" she wrote. Followed by, "I live there now." He didn't respond. 5 minutes later, my mom sent a long paragraph about how the tension in the family was weighing on everyone and how we've lost sight of what matters. And communication is the only path forward. It read like she had copied it from some therapy podcast she listened to while cleaning. Still no reply. I didn't answer either. I just watched it unfold. What no one said directly, but we all knew was that my sister had moved back in. She hadn't admitted it in the chat, but the signs were there. She stopped talking about her apartment altogether. No more pictures of her old building or the stupid balcony with the 2 fake plants. And then there were the stories she posted, grainy shots of their kitchen table, her cat lying on the ugly green couch, and the unmistakable wallpaper in the background. She hadn't told anyone, not even me. And when I cut off her rent last week, she didn't push back as hard as I expected. She just vanished for a few hours and then reappeared later with cryptic posts and no mention of where she was living. But now it was official. She was back home living with them. And my dad had apparently had enough. After his message, the group chat froze. No back and forth. No pity place. No one trying to shift blame. Nothing but quiet. Later that day, my uncle tried to lighten the mood. He sent a message saying, "How about a family barbecue? Clear the air. You know, burgers fix everything." No one reacted. Not even with a thumbs up. That might have been the first time in family chat history. His jokes went completely ignored. By evening, my mom tried again. Another long message. This one more emotional about how no one was perfect, but we had to find a way to heal. She even mentioned that Dad didn't mean it the way it sounded like he was. Some confused old man who needed translation. However, he did mean what it sounded like. The second night was even more subdued. As everyone knew, the conversation didn't blow up with gibberish for once. No one shared hazy pictures of previous family reunions or links to coupons. Almost out of habit. I checked my phone every few hours. But it was empty. There was no peace. It was a storm's eye. The shift in the ground had been felt by all. Nobody wished to set something off again. My sister even halted her daily schedule. No messages. No unintentional texts intended to agitate me. No small, sarcastic posts. Radio silence. That evening, I went for a long walk, down to the park trail's end, around the block, past the bakery, which was always too early to close. I didn't give the cabin any thought. I didn't consider my mother's remarks at brunch. The car, or the rent. My dad was on my mind. I had always pondered when he was silent. The fact that he had just been checked out and was too weak or exhausted to participate didn't bother him. However, I was beginning to question whether it was something else. Perhaps, like me, he had been observing all along, quietly becoming frustrated. Perhaps he finally had enough. I finally took a look around my flat when I got home. Once more, it felt like my own space. Tidy. Keep quiet. Not bothered. There isn't any external tension. When the following day went by without receiving any family messages, I became aware of something I hadn't felt in a while. Relief. No mayhem. Don't feel guilty. No emotional surprises. Nobody is acting as though the past never occurred. Simply be silent. And something else began to grow in that silence. My life started to feel like mine once more. The quiet didn't just go on. It got deeper. It was 3 days later. Even my mother, who used to send daily articles with titles like "How to Rebuild Trust in Families" or passive-aggressive memes about forgiveness, did not send out a single message from the group chat. I completely removed the thread by the 5th day. No one was blocked by me. I didn't say anything significant. I simply deleted the app from my home screen and resumed my normal activities. Then, oddly, things began to move. The work improved. For the first time in months, I was clear and focused. I wasn't bringing unnoticed burdens to every meeting. After spending so much time waiting for the next text, I managed to get through 4 days without being distracted by the buzz of it. It simply became quiet. I went back to cooking. I returned to the fitness center. I can't recall who used to be in the passenger seat, but I just wanted to drive. So I rented a car for a weekend road trip. No commitments. No expectations. Only me. My sister then called me on the 6th day. I rang it out. Her voicemail was left. She spoke in a controlled but strained tone. She claimed that she needed to talk because things had gotten out of control and that her father's message had shocked everyone. Mom was now tense and cautiously moving about the house. She said she needed my assistance in trying to fix it. Then she said it. I know you canceled the rent, but I'll figure it out if you could just cover July for one last time. I didn't return the call. She texted that evening. Really? Are you just going to abandon me? What a brunch remark. Adult up. I also didn't respond to that. The explosion began the following morning. I got a private message from a cousin who wanted to know what had happened and why. Everyone was pretending that someone had passed away. In a fresh voicemail, my uncle accused me of being immature and aloof. I didn't bother to read the paragraph my mother wrote. The preview appeared in my notifications. It began with, "My sister's hurt was the one that stuck. But you're not the only one who has experienced it." She wrote later that evening, "They are discussing forcing me to leave. Dad refuses to talk to me at all. Do you really think you can watch that happen?" It wasn't apologies. But it was desperate. Nothing she had done had been acknowledged. No acknowledgement of my experiences. Merely an expectation. I still believe that I will always succeed. I didn't respond. I received a notification from an old family group thread that I had not yet muted 2 days later. My dad sent me a single message. I commanded everyone to halt. "You won't have this house if you continue to push." After that, nobody responded. Not even her. The family group fell silent once more after my dad's second message. This time, longer. 3 whole days. Nothing. It was the sort of quiet that isn't calming. It just loaded. As if they were all holding their breath, awaiting the 4th day to see who breaks first. At the pharmacy, I was waiting in line when I received a text from an unfamiliar number. It was merely a Facebook post link. Just the link. With no message. I gave it a tap. My sister was the one. A lengthy public article about toxic families and how some people act helpful only to manipulate you later. Although she didn't use my name, it was clear who she was referring to. She wrote about a certain sibling who had abandoned her financially and unjustly and cited the entire family against her. Comments were flooding in. "You deserve better," her friends said in their comments, and permanently cut them off. I remained silent. I took a screenshot, but I didn't message her. My mom texted me that same evening. "We must speak. It's crucial." I chose to ignore it. Everything broke around 9:30 a.m. The following morning, Ben, my cousin, gave me a direct call. He was one of the few who hadn't taken sides yet. But I nearly didn't respond. "Hey, man," he said. "Have you had any conversations today?" "No. Your sister is no longer residing there." I stopped. "What are you saying? She arrived at my house last night, crying and carrying bags. Claimed that your father threatened to throw out her belongings if she didn't leave." I waited. "Did he say that?" "Really, I'm not sure what exactly happened. But it seems like your mom has been phoning people this morning to say she didn't know he would go that far." I was surprised by that because of how cold he had been lately. He wouldn't really throw her out, in my opinion. However, it is possible that I misjudged his level of disengagement from the entire situation. Perhaps I wasn't alone. He had had enough. Perhaps he had been silently observing it all for years. The same as mine. At last, he lost his temper. I was still on the call when my phone buzzed once more. The subject line of the email read, "Termination of joint account authorization." My dad gave it to me. When my mom started losing track of her bills 2 years ago, I helped him set up an online account for them. And he had taken her out of it. It appears that he never changed the backup contact, even though I shouldn't have admin alerts anymore. Within an hour, more arrived, including a voicemail from my mother, a change to the utilities account, a canceled recurring insurance payment, and one that was in her name. She didn't sound sad or measured this time. It was furious. She claimed that this is what happens when you allow things to fester, and that my dad was being unreasonable by punishing all of us. I should come talk to him. Not her, she said. That bit stayed with me. They had lost their unity. They would part ways. Not formally, but in an unspoken household split of some sort. That evening, I didn't return the call. Perched on my balcony, I gazed out over the city. It seemed far away, as if it were happening to another person, and I didn't feel caught up in their chaos for the first time in years. I felt no culpability. I was liberated. It was 2 weeks later. Not even a message. Neither my mom nor my uncle tried to stir things up with a forwarded article. The group chat remained inactive. No one dared to turn the switch back on. As if someone had unplugged the entire network. I remained silent. I failed to check in. I was not curious. The silence wasn't the strangest part. It was the speed at which, after they were gone from it, life began to come back into order. I fell asleep really fell asleep. Not the kind that wakes you up at 3 in the morning, pondering a discussion that hasn't even taken place yet. I was alert and rested when I woke up. I wasn't looking for chaos on my phone. I wasn't planning my day around who was going to blow something up or who needed what. I returned to the gym, but with unpackaged groceries. I even began doing twice-weekly volunteer work at a nearby shelter. Something I had considered doing for years, but never had the mental capacity to do. Then, suddenly, without warning, I received a letter. A handwritten, authentic one. No address for return. However, I quickly recognized the handwriting. My father. It wasn't long. You were right to go. Alex. I allowed things to spiral out of control by remaining silent for too long. You have new acquaintances. Anything. You didn't. Keep whatever tranquilly you were able to find. Dad. Not a drama. No. I apologise. Don't take a guilt trip. Only those words. At first, I wasn't sure how I should feel after reading it 3 times while seated at my kitchen table. There was no closure. It was merely reassurance that I might not have been insane. That perhaps it had been seen by others as well. Even if they were late in saying it. I didn't give him a call. I didn't send a text. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, along with some other items that serve as reminders of my identity. My manager at work sent me an email a few days later. The company had saved more than anticipated thanks to the project I had been leading, which I believe no one was interested in. I was getting promoted. Lager title. Better times. More authority. That same day, I agreed to it. Without hesitation. Then I took a trip for myself for the first time in my life. 2 weeks. A tiny cabin away from Flagstaff. Sky. Trees. No neighbors. I turned off all notifications. Rented a car. And drove off. The problem is this. Nobody discusses the fact that healing isn't always pleasant at first. It feels empty at times. As if you're standing in a room that was once a storm. You can only hear the wind now. You anticipate the subsequent clamor. The next fight. The next demand. However, it doesn't arrive. You begin to fill the area with important items. You begin to recall the sound of your own voice without those background noises. I was not missing the family conversation. The guilt didn't escape me. My final night in the cabin was a performance that I did not miss. I sat with a blanket and a beer outside under the stars. And I considered all that had transpired. The eviction. The voicemail. The post. The credit line. The car. The brunch and so on. Everything. And I wasn't angry for the first time. I simply felt finished. Not in the dramatic sense. They say that when they're still waiting for someone to come after them. But not in that way. I was really done. They are still around. They continue to converse. There's probably still rumors circulating about me. They may even believe that I will return at some point. I won't. Though, because leaving isn't always a response. It's a slow, deliberate decision. When making with a steady hand and a clear head, and you don't turn back once you've arrived. The revision. 2 weeks have passed since my return from the cabin. The night I got home, I unpacked everything and kept my whereabouts a secret. Not a single message to family members. Not even out of interest. On their end, nothing has changed. The group chat is still quiet. No updates. No sporadic check-ins. My sister hasn't made another attempt to get in touch with me. Not after being evicted from the house and the Facebook post. Ben informed me that she temporarily moved in with a friend. It sounds like she has been avoiding responsibility by telling people that she is taking time to focus on herself. Regarding my parents, Since my dad's letter, I have not heard from either of them. Nothing, no guilt. Knuckles. Strangely enough, I believe that's how he intended it to be.